Hi, everyone. Hello, hello. Please let me know if anyone is here, if you can hear me, and then I will introduce myself and we can start having some coffee with Coach. So let me know if you're here and you can, this is the awkward part of YouTube. I probably could just start, but it's an interactive YouTube. So I'm just gonna wait a few seconds. If you can hear me, let me know. Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome to Coffee with Coach. There's like a funny thing on Instagram or a meme or whatever where they're like, I'm just waiting for everyone to hop on. That's what I feel like when I do this. But I see there's 4 people here. Can you guys hear me? If you can just drop it in the chat if you hear me, that would be really great. I've done this before and no one's heard me. So say hello. Tell me where you're from. How about that? Hello. This is awkward. Okay, so I'm going to start. Hi, TJ. Thank you so much. Welcome. So I'm going to get started. I'll introduce myself, and then we can get into this. This is Kristine Iandiorio. I am a coach with Hensel Coaching and Consulting. So I partner with Tracy, and I am a coach that is available for coaching for all of your professional and personal needs. I focus primarily on working with women, helping them get unstuck, helping them create the life that they want. And we have been doing Coffee with Coach now for the past couple of months. Super fun. I have a couple of topics today that have been presented to me. So I want to hear your thoughts as we go through them. And very interesting. But if anyone is looking for coaching, I will put in the link at the end, one-on-one personal coaching. It would be an honor to have a discovery call with you. And so, okay, let's get started. So, the first topic today that was submitted was about, I'm just going to look at my notes. It was about complainers. So, how many of you have a complainer in your life, a chronic complainer? So, this particular person said it was a family member. They were constantly complaining about um, their weight, their health, and the person who submitted the question said she wasn't sure what to do about it. And so I'm curious, does anyone have any chronic complainers in their life? Can you relate? And what this person said, that they complain and then they're kind of like not handling the situation properly based on the advice that they're giving them. And there's a couple of things that came up for me as I read this. And I just want to like share that, every situation is different, right? There is a backstory behind every single thing. I'm here to just share based on the little knowledge that I have, based on our interactions. What comes up when someone submits a question about, like, what do I do when someone complains a lot and they are not handling it properly? And so, the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about this question was the person complaining. Like, yes, there's always people that complain, and there's people that drain your energy. And overall, I really notice when there's people in my life who complain, and like I limit my time with them. If it's someone that I can limit, I do, right? If I don't feel good, if my energy is depleted, anytime I leave the situation, I really notice that. So pay attention to when you feel like you are being lifted and energized and excited when you walk away from a partner. And also just note a partner or a friend or anyone. And also note when you don't feel that way. And so that's the first thing, is just like, limiting time. But the second thing that came up was, is this person complaining because they want your advice or they want your help or they want to vent? And a lot of times, especially as a coach, it's really important to ask people like, do you just want to vent to me or do you actually want some advice or help in solving your problem? And by asking that question, you understand where you stand, because it could be really frustrating to have the same conversation over and over again with people. But you have to see where you have to meet them where they're at and understand, um, like, what are they looking for from you? And so a lot of times, yes, people like that can bring you down. It's draining to be with someone who complains all the time. If it is someone close to you, you might want to have a conversation of like, hey, I just noticed that every time we were together, you're talking about the same thing. And, I'm just wondering how I can help you with this because I really want you to feel good about it. And it just sounds like it's coming from a really bad place. So you can address it. You know, um, it's like choosing how do I handle this? And so I think too, a couple of things came up. One is like people sometimes just want to be seen and heard. And so if they're complaining, and I actually heard this from a parenting coach, but like if your kids are whining, it's usually because they have a need that they need to be met. And it's not necessarily that they just want to whine, it's like they don't know how to express themselves. And it's pretty similar with complaining, right? Like someone is maybe has a need that's not being met, and they might not have that much awareness to understand that. But so in this situation, if someone's complaining about weight loss or diet or whatever it is, they probably feel very stuck and they may feel very powerless. And as a friend, it's sometimes not our job to help people, gain their power back or to solve people's problems. But I would say if someone's complaining often about the same thing, that they feel really powerless and stuck and that they don't know what to do. Now, in those moments, it feels like, why like, it would be really helpful to just validate them and acknowledge them so that they could feel seen and heard. And this is something I do with clients all the time. It's not my job to say, don't feel that way, or it's not my job to say, why don't you feel this way? People's feelings are valid. And if you are able to say to them, I can see how that could be really hard for you. I see you're struggling with this. It sounds like it's really difficult for you to get on track. Where can I help? How can I help? What are you thinking? Get curious, right? Hear them, see them, get curious. And this is if you're invested in the relationship, right? We don't have to do this for everyone. We get to pick and choose where we want to put our energy. Like the person earlier said, there are people that bring you down. They are never happy. You might decide that you set a boundary and I don't spend as much time with those people. I don't talk to those people as much. But if you're wondering like I am really invested in this person, then you have options too and you can help them. But I think it's really understanding, like looking at yourself. And if someone's complaining, it's like sometimes they don't even want to hear your advice. They're not even listening, which could be frustrating to you as a person. So acknowledging and validating, notice, ask them for solutions, because everyone, like this person in the question, which I thought was really interesting, she said they're not handling it properly. And what I would like to call out about that is not everybody is going to do things the same way that you do them. So I take a yoga class and the yoga teacher says, I offer suggestions, you make decisions. And I love that. I love, love, love that because um I love like I'm only suggesting things to you. You have to see what's right for you. For someone to go, if it's an exercise regimen, running might not be the right thing for them, even though you are a runner and it keeps you in the best health of your life. They have bad knees. So running's not their solution, right? So I think sometimes it's like just asking, like, Okay, well, what's something you want to do differently? How can I help? What do you think? What has interest you? Like, and just try to get the conversation going. Because I think a lot of times, like we said, when you're complaining, you're stuck and powerless. So that person might think, this is it. I have no options. You tell me to run, I can't run, so I have no options. And it's a very catabolic negative mindset to feel stuck and stressed, but we've all been there, and it just might be in a different place. So when you say like they're not taking your advice, it's also it might not be right for them, And so that is just really interesting. And I think a lot of things are understanding your energy. So it's like this question was brought up about like wanting, I think, to help someone else. But at the end of the day, you can only help people who want to be helped. And if you find yourself repeating and having the same conversation and the same complaints coming up all the time from someone and it's not changing, you also have to understand like, okay, well, how do I want to respond to this? How is this about me? What's mine and what's theirs? Like, why are you getting so frustrated and emotional about it? Um, you know, what's it triggering in you? Is it that you want to be right? Is it that you want to fix things? Like, ask yourself questions when you get really worked up about something because it usually means something about you. And that's a good thing. It's just getting curious about yourself to say, like, why does it bother me so much that she, is doing that? Why is it bothering me so much? So get really curious, and it's really interesting to see what comes up. I have a client, and I think this is a really great story, and I just want to look at Tina's. I don't know how I found my way here. Hi, Tina. But I do know no one can bring you down. The only way people bring you down, suffocate you, and suck the life out of you is because you gave it all away. That is beautiful and leads to exactly the example and the story that I want to tell. So thank you, Tina. Um, I was working with a client the other day, and I'd say 85% of the conversation was her kind of complaining. Um, everything I said or suggested, she's like, I already did that. I'm in a bad place. It's not working. And sometimes it's not. Like she's working in a toxic work environment. It is toxic. She has been validated that's toxic by other people who are higher up than her. It's toxic. But at the end of the day, she's choosing in this moment to stay in a toxic environment. It's her work. I'm not sure what will happen in the long run. We will be working through that as we partner together because we're working together. But it's toxic. And so finally, at the end of the conversation, I was like, at the end of the day, this is just, it's you putting your head on the pillow each night and it's how you feel. So if you feel like you're doing everything to the best of your ability with integrity and all these things, and there's still toxic stuff happening, it's really a matter of you saying to yourself, I'm not going to be at the mercy of them, of the chaos, of all that's going around me. I am going to stay true to myself. I'm taking my power back, which is something we talked about, I think, last time in Coffee with Coach. And it's like, how do I take my power back? Well, it's making choices for myself. It's not feeling like I have to respond right away to something. And I can say to them, I received your email, but I'm going to respond in a few minutes. I'm going to respond later today when I'm able to think, more clearly about this. It's not reacting to people's emotions. It's staying very much like empowered and feeling powerful. And that's how you take your power back. You don't let everything that happens to you affect you because at the end of the day, that's their stuff. And so, like Tina said, you give it all away. So often we let other people dictate how we feel. And we have to come back to ourselves. And the most interesting thing about this situation is this woman is a smart, vocal woman who really she's an amazing, like she knows what she's doing, but they're taking advantage and they're just like steamrolling her and all the things. But if you trust yourself and you say this is what's right for me, this is what's aligned for me, this is who I am, and you stand in that and you don't get swayed by other people, you really are able to stand in your confidence. And so, long story short, I think the things that came up in that conversation, which could be what comes up here when you're working with someone who's a complainer or toxic, right? It's, how do you respond versus react? So it's very funny because in the situation with my client, I said, I think you need to slow down. And I didn't say it like that, but I was like, I feel like you need to slow down. You're so quick to do everything and fix everything. And she's like, that's not it. And then, like, in the next session, when we talked again, she said, I just need to pause. I need to give myself permission, to give myself time to have thoughtful responses, to not react with emotion, to not get all wrapped up in, what's going on and the drama of it, and just stay like, this is my role, and stay, steadfast in that. And so, slowing down sometimes so that you can respond versus react. You can get curious and ask questions versus telling, right? People don't want to be told things, they want to be heard. The other thing is, where do you need to set boundaries? In this situation, it might be a family member that complains all the time, and that's not the conversation you want to have every time you see them. It's very draining. So you might have to say, is there, I understand you're struggling with this, but, it sounds like, you really don't have a plan. I'm happy to help you. But if not, like, let's talk about something else, right? You can set those boundaries. You can just say, I really don't, I'm really not feeling like I can talk to you about this right now. Again, say no. Don't go in with that person as much. You get to decide where you spend your time and energy. Another big thing, don't take things personally. Because she's not listening to you has nothing to do with you, right? Or because she's not doing it the way you want to do it has nothing to do with you. Notice when you want to be right? Notice when you want to be the authority, when you want to be the savior, when you want to be the fixer. These are things, again, like, get curious about, like, why am I so wrapped up in this? It's just really interesting what might come up for you when you ask yourself those questions. Why am I getting all annoyed? Why am I getting all emotional? What's underneath all that for you? It's just something to be curious about. Again, this is a one-sided conversation. I'm not sure if the person who submitted the question is here, but I'm not really seeing them. If you're here, please let me know. You keep answering all my questions as I'm typing them. That's awesome, Kathy. Share your questions. I'm happy to even just reiterate, because sometimes it helps to hear these things over and over again, or I might even see the question and it might spark something else in my mind, which is why this is so good that you guys are interactive. So I appreciate that. So again, if the person who submitted this question is here, please comment. Let me know if I'm on track with what your needs are and what you're thinking, or a solution to your problem and what you're struggling with. Happy to help with that. And lastly, yeah, thank you. Something to think about. I have a family member I need to deal with. Good advice. So, Calla Lily Carol, like, what specifically stands out to you about kind of the advice, or like what you would like to take forward? I'm curious, like, what stands out as what could work for you. And like I said, what works for you might not work for someone else. We have to feel really good about our choices. But sometimes we have to push ourselves and feel uncomfortable, which is where maybe a boundary comes in, not taking things personally could come in. Um, the other thing is, like, detach from the emotion about it. A lot of these things we get all worked up and emotional about it, but it's like, do we have to? Some things just are. We don't have to attach good or bad or right or wrong or judgment. They just are. And it's like, if you stay in your lane, and not get in other people's boxes, it makes a really big difference for your own energy. And so, if anyone else has anything about this topic, chronic complainers, please comment. I would love to hear. I think the other thing that I notice, even about myself, and it's not really complaining, but is the ability to want to fix things for everybody. I just want to fix it. I don't want them to feel bad. I don't want to hear, but, like, we don't have to fix. Everyone's kind of has to take responsibility from themselves. So also just notice the role that you're trying to play in relationships. It could just be helpful to see, like, well, I wanted to fix it. I want her to feel better, but, like, it's sometimes that's not our jobs. So Calla Lily Callie, something to think about. I have a family to think about what their problem is and to separate from them. Yeah. I mean, I think that in a lot of ways, something that might be a struggle for you is not a struggle for someone else, and vice versa. And we all come from different places. We all come from different backgrounds and all situations that have led us to where we are. So it's a unique situation for everyone, right? The other thing that I thought was interesting, just last to round it out, is sometimes, people, again, it goes back to asking them, do you just want to vent, or do you want my help? Do you want my advice? And then also just knowing that they may not take your advice, and that's okay too. But I think sometimes, when someone's complaining or venting, and I actually was complaining to or venting the other day, and it was so interesting because the person on the receiving end kind of was just like brushing it off. Right. And I'm not really a big complainer, but I was just really frustrated by some things that had happened. And I was like, yeah, and this happened, and I couldn't. And I don't know if she felt uncomfortable in my complaining, or if it just like she wanted to kind of like that toxic positivity of like, it's just fine. It's not that bad. But I walked away from that conversation, and I remember feeling like, I was just like, that's just so interesting. I'm like, there was nothing wrong with the conversation. I just didn't walk away feeling very good about it. And it wasn't because I was like complaining and negative. It's just something wasn't like, I felt like a void. And what I noticed later on, because I do this work and so I live in it, and I help people, and so I see it, right? I see it a lot. I was like, oh my gosh, she just dismissed everything I said. And all I needed in that moment was someone to say, like to acknowledge and validate what I was saying, and just be like, "Oh wow, that's so frustrating." Yeah, I would, it would have made so much. It would have made it so much easier if she had just said that yesterday instead of today. Like, all I wanted someone to say is like, "I hear you, I see you, I validate that you like you're frustrated for a reason. That makes sense." And I walked away from the conversation, and I remember just feeling like empty, or I was just like, "That was weird. I feel strange about something." But, like, nothing went wrong in the conversation, but it was because I wasn't acknowledged and validated. It wasn't being seen and heard. I had needs that were not being met. We all have that need to be seen and heard, and so just think about that when you're having exchanges with people. I think about it with my kids all the time, like, I'm so quick to be like, "Ah, it's not that bad," or, "Oh, like, duh," like, people just want to be seen and heard. I think it's really important. And then just because you're validating them doesn't mean that you're reinforcing what they're saying. It just means like, I hear you, I see you. And then it might be, especially like with my kids, it's like, oh yeah, I could see how that could be really hard. Like, what's another way that we can like look at that or approach it, as opposed to like living in it? So just a suggestion. I found, even myself, like I found it with myself. I was like, wow, I really wanted to be acknowledged and validated when I was so frustrated. And so just think about that when someone is like complaining around you. Um, and like I said, with my example with the toxic people, like some people are just toxic. And when you realize that, and you realize like over and over and over again that you're feeling the same drain every time you're with them, and you can't navigate it, or you feel like, I don't even want to, it's not worth it, just notice that, and you can walk away, or you could set the boundaries and not spend as much time there. So I hope that was helpful. So thanks for some of the interaction. If there anybody has a topic that they want to talk about, this is like open coaching. Put it in the chat. Would love to hear from you. The other question, I'm just going to look at my notebook really quickly. How to get started on big projects that are overwhelming. The examples this person put was like losing weight, decluttering, clearing out items, being in survival mode. And so, I think a lot of times we feel really overwhelmed by our to do list. So I'm curious, does anyone relate to this? Validation, yeah. Does anyone relate to kind of having a big project, constantly putting it off, not knowing where to start, or even saying to yourself, tomorrow's Monday, I'm going to start with my exercise routine again. And then you stop 2 days later, and then you find yourself beating yourself up. So let me know if anyone can relate to that kind of like how to get started on big projects. Drop it in the comment. What I will tell you until I hear comments, because I don't want to pause too long. I worked with a client who I love her dearly. She originally reached out to me. She's like, my to-do list is too long. It's crazy. I have this Alexa to-do list and it's insane. And she actually sent me an Alexa to-do list that had probably 200 items on it. And I could relate to feeling overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed in simply receiving an email. None of the things were mine. But I can understand why, you know, you don't even know where to start. And it's easier to take a nap or just go do something else than all these things on your to do list. And so, what we worked on with her was really going, so having a list is helpful, right? Seeing all the things in your head that you want to get done or that you have aspirations to do, it's really helpful. But separating it into like, okay, what does this look like? What do I need to do now? What am I putting off until next, when these things now, like next? And then what are like the dream, right? Like she had like winemaking on there because she bought a winemaking kit. So like I was like, well, unless it's something you want to schedule for yourself now, like get it off that immediate list that you're looking at all the time, because it is overwhelming to look and say, oh my gosh, I have like 80 things to do. So we started by like kind of breaking everything out by when you wanted to get it done. Like some things are urgent, like call the doctor. Some things aren't so urgent, like, by whatever. So like what kind of compartmentalize. And then what's helpful is to only look at like the to do now list, right? And then it's a matter of like breaking things down. What's most important to you now? How long is something going to take? Like, do I need resources? Just get really curious, but like you only have to do one thing at a time. And I think when you start to like just push things that are not necessary off the list, it helps you get really clear. Because at the end of the day, how long does it take to really call the doctor's appointment? Right? Takes 2 seconds, maybe not 2 seconds because you're put on hold and all these things, but like it's always like we think that things are going to take us so long, so we dread them, but then we get them done and it's like quick and you cross it off the list and it feels good. But, just asking yourself, like, why am I putting some of this stuff off? It could simply be because there's too much and you don't know where to start. Or it's because there's something deeper behind it. And that's something that, like, her and I actually worked on in the long run. There was a lot of stuff that was deeper than just this getting things done list. But that's something that you can work on. But if it's just a matter of like getting started on big projects and just feeling really overwhelmed, one thing at a time. So like here, I'm going to say it wrong every time because it's so long, but Calla Lily Carroll says, yes, in my basement, I have a hard time getting started. So start with one area, right? Start with one area. I'm only going to do this today. And how easy is it for you? Like how many times I like literally am like focused here on one thing and then I find myself there and then I didn't finish that. Like it's so human and normal to be like scattered and not be able to focus. But if you just say, I'm going to spend the next half an hour on this area, and it's like, what do I want to do in that area? Like get clear. The more clarity you have, the easier it is to execute. If you're just like, I know I need to do that, but you're not sure exactly what that is, it's very hard to get started. So, my suggestion is to break things down into small, bite sized pieces so that they are doable. Might be just one thing, clean out the toys, make a donation of clothes, like identify what it is that would be really helpful. And that's your focus. And you might say, I'm going to do that for this whole week because it might take you that long. Or you might not be able to spend like huge quantities of time on it. But just notice, divide and conquer. Yes, divide and conquer. And I just think when you think, and especially we have so much going on, there's so much to do. We are easily distracted, right? Another question that I can talk about was cell phone addiction and social media and how to manage that. But like, we're so distracted. It's really hard to stay focused. The reality is, we don't have the capacity to stay focused for hours and hours on end. I worked with a client recently, even just this stuff about getting big projects and feeling overwhelmed was in his day to day at work. And so we started to talk about things like making the list, understanding what to do now, but also like noticing when he had the most focus and energy. So, like, the morning was a great time for him because he was clear headed. He had just exercised and took a dog for the walk. So, he was like ready to possibly sit down and be creative at that time. By 3 o'clock, he had like a long meeting at lunch. By 3 o'clock, that's not the case. So, like, don't leave those types of tasks till then because you're not going to get done. So just noticing your energy, noticing when you work the best. Some people are night owls. That's when they do things like that. Like kind of like, work towards your strengths, right? The other thing is, because this person had said something about starting and stopping, it's okay to start and stop. Again, I think we have so much going on in our lives. We have a lot of distractions, a lot of juggling priorities. It's okay to put something to the side and then come back to it. I think what happens for many of us is we put it aside because maybe we get tired or burnt out or we need a change, we need rest, and then we beat ourselves up. So it's really hard to get back. And so, if you were to eliminate the beating yourself up piece of this, or the guilt for not doing things, or that I should be doing this when I'm doing that, if you eliminated all that noise and you just woke up the next day and started again, how different would you feel? I think that's a really, really important thing to look at is that when you are starting and stopping, like what's happening and just get curious. Everything is getting curious. Again, I'm just making suggestions. You guys make decisions. But I think it's important to understand yourself and just notice like, when do I start to numb myself out? When do I, pick up my phone? Is it because I don't know what to do? Is it I don't know where to start? Is it I feel overwhelmed? Notice when you start to numb out. And some people, a lot of us do numb out on our cell phones. Some people numb out in, we eat mindlessly. Some people numb out in what else do they do? Alcohol. Like, right, there's many ways to numb yourself out and to step away from reality. But just notice if you're like trying to do a task and you find yourself numbing, like what's going on? Like what feelings are coming up for you? And just also notice what you're saying to yourself. So I think that's helpful. I hope that's helpful. If anyone else has any questions about that, please type them in the comments. And then finally, the last question that came up was around like cell phone addictions and strategies for social media. So how many of you guys can relate? Just let me know in the comments if this is something that you struggle with, and if you have any more texture as to what you would like help with, that would be super helpful. But based on the question, I think so often, so many of us reach for the phone when we feel discomfort. So that's just something to notice. I actually was in a training program recently, and they said to notice when we started to numb out and when our minds started to drift away. It was just, oh, I just got in. I was stuck in a meeting. That's my question. Oh, Norman. Okay, Norm Mary, is there anything that you need? Please let me know. And then I will continue with the cell phone addiction. I did cover, I think, all of your stuff earlier. So definitely go back and rewatch. We talked about chronic complainers. And if you have comments, definitely add them to the comments, even on the replay, because I'll respond. So cell phone addiction. So I took this class and it was about noticing when you numb out, like noticing what's going on. And a lot of times they were saying like you might start feeling discomfort because of what's happening around you. And that causes you to numb out. So I think just noticing like, oh, when do I pick up my cell phone? I notice, this is really interesting. Sometimes when my kids come to me with like big feelings that I now need to help them navigate in the real world. I have a 13 and 11-year-old. You can only imagine like middle school and sometimes the things that come up. And like they'll, have this conversation and I'm like I just it's uncomfortable. Like we have to face uncomfortable feelings. We have to have a hard conversation. I find myself like going to scroll on social media when that happens because I just want to avoid. Like my thing is avoidance. Like I know it. So I'll go on my cell phone. And I'm avoiding having the hard conversation. I recognize this. I am then able to sometimes like put it down and then, okay, I'm ready for you and ready to have this conversation. But I am a avoider and I will avoid on my cell phone. So, in the comments, if you guys have any reasons where you feel like where you need help with the cell phone, please put them. But I noticed that about myself. And then, second thing is if you just feel like you scroll too much, there's simple things like not having your phone next to you all the time, putting time limits on your apps, just like we do for our kids. I do not bring my cell phone to bed at night. I leave it downstairs. I go upstairs. Or if you need a phone in the room, to put it very far away from you. It just helps manage the scrolling. And also, I think just like deleting apps from your phone, very helpful. I've done that before. If you really need it, you could add it back. But these are all just like little techniques to help you manage how you're spending your time. And it's interesting because what I actually realized recently too, as instead of going on my cell phone, I would do like the small tasks that like takes 5 minutes. Like instead of being on here, I might go do something else like empty the dishwasher or make the so like something to keep me occupied versus because there's plenty to do, but I think once you pick it up is when you get sucked in. The other thing I've been doing is reading books, and because I'm reading more, I'm not on my phone more, which I think is really helpful. Lisa says an hour will go by after scrolling, and I won't remember what I even looked at, getting very upset with myself. 100%. I mean, these apps are programmed to do that to us. There is nothing important on them. There's nothing. Like, you could go a week and then decide to scroll and you're all it's like a soap opera. You visit it every day and you don't miss anything. I haven't, like, watched anything in years, and all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh, that's the same character and they're dating this." You won't miss anything. So, once you pick it up over get it out of sight, out of mind. Don't carry it around. This is something that I stopped doing. I actually got the Apple Watch because I was like, well, if someone needs to call me on this and I'll go. I don't need this next to me all the time. Um, Notice where you're spending your time, and put time limits on. You can set a timer for yourself. Like if you pick up the phone, set a timer to say 15 minutes and let it ding and then make a choice. And so we have the power to choose how we spend our time. Social media is programmed to suck us in. So it is very human. You do not need to get upset at yourself, but what you can say is, I'm going to do this I'm not doing this again. And you set that intention, and it's like, what do you need to do to separate? And so it's just conscious. And sometimes we fall off the wagon. Sometimes we need a good hour of scrolling. There's nothing wrong with that. It's so interesting. And I think this again goes back to beating yourself up, is that like, what would it look like if you just said, oh gosh, I spent an hour there. Well, now I'm going to get up and do what I said I wasn't going to do. And you moved on and you didn't beat yourself up. Like, what would it feel like? I was actually, I don't know if I was talking to someone, but I find for myself, when I'm waiting for things. Like, well, we all know if we're waiting online somewhere, we're all scrolling on our phones. But and it would be interesting if you just put your phone away and said, "Well, I'm just going to like observe and look around and just take my surroundings in," instead of that. It's an experiment. Play with it. Like if you notice it, you're standing on your phone online in your with your phone, try something different, right? Just say, I'm going to put it away today. I'm going to look around. I'm just going to observe. Oh, I love the reading. I'm really into reading books. I finished Where the Crawdads Sing. I'm reading lots of summer great reads, and it's just so much more fulfilling than scrolling on my phone. The other thing you could do, I like the clock, I like the timer. I think it's just noticing and just kind of saying to yourself, today, when I'm here, I'm not going to do this. Or if you say, like, okay, these are the things it's like, again, it goes back to clarity. If you know what you want to accomplish, you're more likely to actually get it done than just kind of like it's during the idle time when I'm waiting that I go on my phone. And, the other day, I think I was scrolling because I had like weird chunks of time in between appointments. And I always find myself going to my phone. Now, I can say I don't want to do that and I put it somewhere else and I do something else because I've made a conscious choice. I'm aware that I don't want to do that, so I make another plan. And then there's other days where I'm like, whatever. I said I scrolled for 15 minutes, I scrolled for the hour, whatever it is, and I just said, "You know what? I just did it. Tomorrow I'll do differently." I try not to beat myself up. So I think that that is a big piece of all of this. I know we don't want to scroll on our phones and like waste time and it's like you get nothing out of it. I understand that. But if you also agree that every once in a while you're going to do it, or maybe schedule time for it. That's another idea. If you're like, I'm only scrolling on my phone from 7 to 7:30 when I'm waiting for this, that's the only time I scroll, then honor that. So I think it's like setting a goal, honor yourself. Just really be conscious of it. And so once you kind of create that conscious awareness, you can actually make change. So anyway, so I think that's it for today, unless anyone else has a question. I'm curious if there's um, any other topics to discuss. Feel free to drop them. I live in Sydney, and after work recently, I've been taking the train to Sydney Opera House and reading a chapter of my Dracula novel, and then walk home, which is over 40 minutes. Stratus strong. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. I love, go for a walk instead if you have time, right? Move your body, do some stretches. Like there's a lot of things you can say to yourself, okay, if I'm not doing this, what do I want to do with my time? And then you get to create that. And so thank you for that comment. Thank you everyone for your comments. I think just when you say to yourself, this is something that I'd like to do instead, and it might be read a book, it might be cook dinner, it might be straighten up, it might be text a friend, call a friend, replace it with something else. And that might help you because you're going to feel like you're so much more excited or fulfilled in doing something else than being on the phone. And so, and also just know, um, it was designed to do exactly what it's doing. And so it's very human. Everyone is struggling with this. I think most people would say, I don't want to be on my phone as much as I am. And so it's just really conscious choice and noticing and getting to start over again tomorrow, just like with the start stop in, managing your day and projects and tasks. You get to do it again tomorrow. You get to course correct. You get to approach it differently anytime you choose. So I give you permission to do that. So thank you all. I appreciate you. I appreciate your comments. I will be back next month. And if anyone is interested in diving deeper into, things that you're struggling with or working on, I'll put a link in the comments of how you can get in touch. All right. Take care and have a great day.